Indoor bonsai or outdoor bonsai? What's the difference and which is the best? Let's find out. There is this big confusion about indoor bonsai and outdoor bonsai, but really they are just trees. There is no difference. This elm here I treat pretty much the same as these trees here. Check the watering regularly, and the pruning and the repotting, the root work is the same. Every species of trees, whether it be an elm or a maple or a juniper or a pine, they all have their little differences, so we have to learn about those. But they're all bonsai. So the only difference is where we keep them. And the ones we class as the outdoor bonsai, which is a vast range, they can tolerate cold winters, frosts and snow, wind and rain, battered. Generally, they're pretty tough. Obviously, we like to look after them. We like to pamper them a little bit, keep them in a sheltered spot in the garden. That's great. But they can tolerate the cold weather. In fact, they need the winter weather to go into dormancy. These ones here, the ones we class as the indoor bonsai, they are not so hardy. Although the elm, the Chinese elm, which makes a superb bonsai, it can live outside. And in fact, I have got some that live outside and they're very good, but they tolerate indoor conditions as well. The little tea tree here and the fig tree, and there's a little sweet plum here. They come from warmer climates, so they can tolerate the heat through the wintertime. So the modern home where we've got double glazing and we've got central heating and it's all nice and warm and cozy through the wintertime, these trees, absolutely fine. The outdoor ones, they wouldn't like that at all. They wouldn't get their rest period, they wouldn't get that dormancy period. That time when spring comes along and the new buds open up and then turn into the big leaves, whatever colour they are. The evergreens, they slow down, they take over a little bit through the winter time, but generally the main growth through the spring and the summer, as is with these ones. But they can tolerate that winter period of the warmth. So they don't need that rest period as much. They still slow down a bit. And they still lose a few leaves. All trees lose their leaves, whether they're evergreen or not. So there really isn't any difference between in or out, and they're all lovely. They all make fantastic bonsai. They've all got their different quirks, different leaves, some a little bit bigger, some reduced down really nicely. The fig leaves, you can get them down to quite a nice size, but they still stay pretty big. Tea tree reduces down a little bit. Generally, the thick, waxier leaves of trees don't reduce down quite so well as the other broadleaf trees like this elm here, maple leaves. Different trees have different barks and different twig structures. So it really doesn't matter, not to me anyway, whether we class them as an indoor or we class them as an outdoor bonsai. They're just bonsai. It's just where we're going to keep them. That's all. And we need to learn about that. Keeping them indoors is a little bit harder in some respects, but it's easier in others. So certainly through the winter time when the weather's really bad, they're inside, much easier to tend to them than going out in the wind and the rain and the whatever. So there isn't any difference. You've just got to learn what they like, where they like to live, what sort of temperatures, and the watering. The watering is the main thing, to make sure that they're not overwatered or underwatered. So that's it really. There really isn't any difference between indoor or outdoor bonsai. It's just where they like to live. Now that we've ascertained that they are all bonsai, let's think about the differences between indoors and outdoors, because this is the biggest difference and this alters how we look after them. Outdoors, there is much better daylight. Indoors, most of the daylight comes in through a window. You might have a very bright house, but generally most of the light will be coming in from one or maybe two directions, depending on where your windows are. So outside, there is much more light around. You still might have the sun on one direction, but generally it's much more even. So that's a big difference. Also, the humidity, that's the other biggest thing. So with indoor bonsai, it's through the winter time, like I said, when you've got the heating on, we've got double glazing, the air tends to be much drier. Outside, we've got the morning dew and the mist and obviously the rain. Certainly in England, through the winter time, the air is much damper. Changes through the summer, but generally even through the summertime, we still have the morning dew and the mists and things like that. So there's two biggest differences between growing bonsai indoors and growing outdoors. So we have to factor that in to how we look after them. And it's still very doable. So let's go back to the light. So if we are keeping our bonsai inside and we're keeping them on a windowsill or on a table near a window and the light is coming in from one direction, then it's important that, I'll show on this one, so if the light is coming in through this way here, that we turn our bonsai. So certainly once a week, if you've got the light coming in, if you've got it a bright room and you've maybe got a couple of windows, then maybe every other week will be fine. But you can tell because the leaves, the trees itself, will start to grow towards the light. And all houseplants will do this. I'm going to say all, there might be some that might not because it's surprising what there is out there. But generally, plants grow towards the light. They need the light to photosynthesize. And as far as the bonsai goes, so if we come back to a bigger tree, it's easy to show you, the light is coming in and it is covering all the foliage. And the leaves are saying, yeah, hey, I can photosynthesize. But at the back here, where it's darker, the tree's thinking, well, I don't need to grow leaves here. I'll just keep them all on the side where I'm getting more light. So the leaves will start to fall off. And this is where we turn. And new shoots like this one, they will start to grow towards the light. So we'll get more growth on this side of the bonsai than on this side of the bonsai. So although through the winter time the growth slows down, trees like this, they will still grow a little bit and still grow towards the light. So all we need to do, just once a week, maybe once every other week through the winter time when the growth slows down, is just turn the tree. But you can tell how often you would need to do that just by watching how the tree grows. As far as the humidity goes, that's quite easy to sort out as well, because all we need to do is to mist our bonsai fairly regularly. So I tend to do mine in the evenings, I suppose, because it's more convenient. I check the watering morning and evening, and I give them a little puff over. This is just water. This is an old mister which I've had for years. A little bit discoloured and he's a little bit rattly, but he's still going. And I'll just give them good mist over like that. Can't overdo it. So that just covers the leaves and puts that humidity back on the foliage. There's also this bonsai mist, which we do, and that has a bit of foliar feed in as well. So this once or twice a week, I'll puff over like that, and that helps keep the leaves nice and healthy as well. So keeping bonsai indoors, we need to make sure they've got good light and, of course, the humidity aspect. Before we wrap up this video, I would just like to go over one very important thing when we're keeping bonsai indoors, and that is the temperature. Particularly in the summertime when, for instance, if you have a south-facing window, you've probably noticed this already, that in the summertime, if you've got a south-facing window, the sun comes through, it can get very hot. So if you've got your bonsai in that sort of position, it can dry out very quickly. So it might be ideal to move it to a different place for the summertime. Obviously, they can go outside. If you have a garden or an outdoor space, you can pop your bonsai outside for the summer, no problem at all. But if you don't have a garden, find a window. It's not going to get too hot, especially if you're not there through the daytime, to make sure they're watered properly. So that's an important thing when keeping bonsai indoors. Make sure they're not going to get too hot through the daytime when you're not there to water them. And also with the outdoor bonsai, hot drying winds through the summertime can cause problems as well. So we need to make sure that they're protected from those drying winds. So there's problems with keeping your bonsai wherever, whether it's indoors or outdoors. We have to make sure that we prevent the winds from drying out the foliage, and we have to make sure that the temperature rise that's very quickly through the summertime. When the sun comes around, just shines through the window, temperature can rise very quickly. So we have to look out for all of those things. If it gets too windy, we can just walk away. We can get some shelter. If it gets too hot, we can walk away, or we can go and get a drink of water. But our bonsai can't do that. So we have to make sure that we provide for them whatever their needs are, wherever we're keeping them, whatever the weather. So we'll finish up with a few close-ups of these beautiful bonsai. Take care. There'll be lots more bonsai videos coming out over the next year, so don't miss out. Subscribe, hit the notifications button, and anything else that you need to do.